the presentation, you want to go ahead and list those in chat, and Max will be monitoring that, and we can then perhaps direct the questions if they aren't answered throughout the presentation. We may have a little bit of time at the very end, but probably not too much because we have a lot to cover. I want to begin by, again, introducing to you and letting you know this very important resource for you on campus. This resource is our scholarship program coordinator, Ms. Sherry Keller. And as she knows, the students that I sent to her, I just said, go to Ms. Keller and tell her to show you the money. And Ms. Keller will show you that money. So please welcome Sherry Keller, students.
Thank you, Patrick, and welcome everybody to the Scholarship Essay Writing Workshop. And thank you so much, Patrick, for doing this session. So just a note to everybody that this session is regarding essay, particularly regarding essay writing. And so this may apply to both the DVC scholarship application or possibly any external scholarships or scholarships you'll be doing from organizations that are outside of DC. So while this session is, as I mentioned, specifically regarding the essay, if you have any questions about the DVC scholarship application, or if you have questions about external scholarship, please feel free to reach out to me directly. You can reach me by phone at 925-969-2094, or you can also email me at the scholarship box, which is scholarships with an S on the end, scholarships@dvc.edu. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. As Patrick mentioned, the deadline for the DVC scholarship application is coming right up. The deadline for DVC scholarships is Thursday, February 16th, not Friday, Thursday, February 16th. So be sure and submit your application no later than Thursday, February 16th. To apply for DVC scholarships, students need to have been enrolled in at least 6 units fall 2022 semester, be currently enrolled in at least 6 units in the spring 2023 semester, and have a minimum 2.0 cumulative GPA. So we all encourage to apply for DVC scholarships if you meet those requirements. And as Patrick and we also have several extra scholarships, many of which are geared towards students who may be transferring this fall semester. So if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. For the DVC scholarship application, I also wanted to mention that that does require 2 recommendations. So if you haven't yet reached out to your 2 people to ask them to do a recommendation for you, you'll want to do that very quickly since the deadline is coming right up. At least one of those recommenders must be a DVC faculty member, which is either a DVC academic course instructor or a DVC academic counselor. So one person needs to be a DVC academic course instructor or a DVC academic counselor. The second person can be many other different individuals. Maybe if somebody's working, that could be a supervisor, it could be maybe a high school teacher, counselor. Second one doesn't necessarily have to be a DVC academic course instructor or a DVC academic counselor, but under no circumstances should that second person be a family member or a friend. So you want to make sure that you have 2 recommendations and make sure they submit the recommendations by their deadline. And their deadline is actually after your deadline. So although you have to submit your DVC scholarship application no later than Thursday, February 16th, your recommenders have until Friday, February 24th to submit a recommendation for you. If you have questions, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. And again, Patrick, thank you so much for doing this, and good luck to all of you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. And if you can, Sherry, drop your number into the chat, please. I think the email's been put in there, but if you can put your number in there in case somebody would like to call you as well. And I just want to say, don't, disqualify yourself. You know, there's a lot of scholarships out there based on major interests, areas, and so forth. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities that it will help you become successful in your education. Okay, so having said that, let's go ahead and get started. I do want to remind you that this is an essay writing workshop, and as an English professor, we know that writing is a process. You just don't sit down and pound something out. I mean, that may be a successful technique for some people, but I don't know how successful it could really be. I know that sometimes when we're under pressure that we do have to, you know, kind of cut corners a little bit, but there's also some sort of process that you should follow. So I'm going to emphasize that throughout this workshop. The other thing I want to mention about the letters of recommendation is don't forget to help your recommenders. Help them by giving them your personal statement, give them your resume, let them know what you've been doing so they can speak highly of you. They need to give us some additional information about your character, who you are, what your potential is as they have experienced you in the classroom. And that's for the academic counselor and the academic college course instructor. I also want you to know that a full-time DVC librarian is also considered to be a faculty member here at DVC, okay? So if you've taken some library classes and work with librarians, you can also utilize them as your one of your recommenders. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen here with you and start this here. This PowerPoint presentation for you. I'm going to close some things up here so you can see this screen. So once again, this workshop is about writing an effective personal scholarship essay. And I can't see any raised hands or anything, so please put everything in the chat. And like I said, Max will be monitoring that. I am a professor here of English. I've been at DVC since a long time ago. I'm getting ready to retire pretty soon. But in my time here at DVC, I have spent 25 years co-coordinating the Puente project. And that is a learning community, one of them that Max had talked about, that he does the FYE. I've also been chairing the scholarship committee. We are now a work group. I've been doing that for several years. And I also serve as a statewide and national trainer for the Puente Project statewide office. And as a matter of fact, next week I'll be going to Houston to do some training there, and we'll be conducting my workshop next week from Houston. So if you want to come back for a refresher, you have other family members, friends that you know that can benefit from this, get them to sign up next week, and that workshop will be on Wednesday of next week from 1 to 2. We try to stagger them on days and some times to make them more available. So because writing's a process, we always start by thinking when we begin to write. So we want to first talk about what our purpose is and the importance of this essay. So remember, when you're writing this essay, this is your opportunity to give scholarship committee members the opportunity to tell about who you are. What aspects of your background are very important to who you are in your identity and also in your search for a career and in your quest for your education. These aspects are not necessarily apparent from other parts of the application. So the essay is your chance to actually provide insight about who you are on a very personal level. This is when you can tell your personal stories. You can tell about events and experiences that have shaped who you are, again, in your identity, in your interests, in your fields, in your careers. We want to know about that because we can see that, okay, you're taking all of these science classes and you want to do something in the STEM field perhaps, but we really don't know what it is. So it's the essay that allows you the opportunity to do this. Most importantly, the essay, as in all of your academic classes, it stresses critical thinking, right? And the critical thinking is the so what. So what you did this, so what you're majoring in that. What is significant about that for you and your family, the community, and more importantly, in our society, okay? So you really need to show how your experiences and things that you have, decisions that you have made, how they show growth in you, how they show reflection, and what you learned about yourself, okay? So we know that what classes you took. We know what your GPA is based on your transcript, on your academic record. So maybe you don't necessarily want to emphasize that so much in the essay. We know what your financial need is based, if you've looked at the scholarship application, you have to put in financial information. So we know what that is. But yet you may want to talk about in the essay, how this scholarship is going to help you, how it's going to benefit you into reaching your goals to obtain your education. So when a committee member then makes a decision on who to select for particular scholarships, they consider that financial need that's on the application. They consider your academic record that you've submitted through your transcript through the application and your personal attributes. And all of those personal attributes mostly come through on the essay, because you will also identify leadership and community service activities that you participated in, and that's on a list. But we need more than just that list. We need to know why you got involved in that, with that organization, why you participated in this leadership activity. And in that participation, how did you grow? What did you learn about yourself, others, about society? So that shows how you are reflecting upon those experiences. And that reflection is the critical thinking. That is that so what that we're looking for. So what that you did that? How did you grow and how did you learn about yourself? So as I mentioned, writing is a process, okay? And if you have several pieces of paper here, we're going to take a couple of minutes to do some of these activities. We're actually going to go through about 3 brainstorming activities. And through these activities, you will hopefully be able to identify topics that you can write about, or something may rise to the top of what is important to you to get your message across on who you are. So this first activity, let's just take about 3 or 4 minutes to do a timeline, okay? And when Ms. Keller talked about you can have a recommendation from maybe a high school counselor, but if your high school was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we want to think about things that are more recent and more relevant, like within the last 2 years. But for this timeline activity, you can look at the last 5 years. So on a blank piece of paper, you want to just draw like a Likert scale line out. And on the left-hand side, you would put February 2018. And then 5 years, now that's 5 years back because now it's 2023. So take about 3 minutes and plot out what events have happened to you that have been significant to you within these last 5 years, okay? Maybe for returning students, there has been a birth of a child, okay? Maybe, unfortunately, some of us had to deal with death, and maybe we've had to deal with a parental death, or maybe some key person in our family has died. Or maybe you went on an exciting excursion, a vacation that sparked your interest in something. Or maybe during this time you participated in an internship. So take about 3 minutes and just plot out within the last 5 years, if you haven't seen somebody in 5 years, what would be the highlights that you would tell them? Because you're not going to go through in 2018, this happened. In 2019, this happened. No, we summarize. We say, these have been the highlights of what's happened to me within the last 5 years. So let's take about 2 minutes now to plot those out. You can go beyond the 5 years if it is a very if it was a very significant event to you, like maybe your parents divorced 10 years ago and you became a single parent household and you had to grow up that way. Or maybe you immigrated to this country maybe 7 years ago. Those are key things that you could put in there, but really try to keep it within the last 5 years. Okay, so we got about 2 more minutes to do this activity so we can move on to our next brainstorming activity. Plot out significant events in the last 5 years if you needed to bring somebody up to date on your life. So I know we didn't have much time to actually participate in doing full brainstorming on this activity here, but the idea here is just to introduce you to these activities of brainstorming that will enable you to determine and to help you identify topics that you may want to write about in this essay that again help define who you are and why you're a good fit for a particular scholarship. And remember, writing's a process, so we always think before we actually write. And I know that I see that there are some of my former students in the class, and they know that this is something that I will express over and over and over. It's the planning that helps you do much better in the end product. Okay, so as we move on, you want to pull out another piece of blank paper so we can do our next brainstorming activity. And as I explain this activity, you can begin to, start filling out these boxes now. But this activity is called 4 squares, and it's a brainstorming activity where you would take your paper, you fold it in half, and then you fold it in half again. So you have 4 quadrants on your paper. And the upper left-hand corner, you want to title that, my name, something about my name. In the upper right-hand box, you want to put my achievements, okay? In the lower left-hand box, we call this your bucket list. What are things that you want to accomplish in your career or in your lifetime? In your educational journey as well as in your career and just in life in general. And the last box on the right-hand side, and the lower right-hand side, I call this embarrassing moments, or you can call it challenging moments, okay? So now that you know these 4 areas, I'm going to explain them a little bit more, but as I'm explaining them, you can begin to fill them out. And you don't have to go in order about this at all, but you can go what pops into your mind first, because it's just brainstorming. And then after you're introduced to this and we leave this workshop, you can always come back to this as you begin to write your essay. But something about your name. Your name identifies who you are. We have strong feelings about our name. Either we like it, we don't like it, we want to change it, we have pride in it, we have no pride in it. But what is something about your name? So I know that my name is Patrick, okay? Well, how did I get that name? Well, I grew up in a Catholic family. My mom is a Latina from Mexico, and my dad is a Chinese Asian guy, even though he's Buddhist. My mom raised us and dad raised us in the Catholic faith. So I'm named after a saint, just as my brothers are. My older brother is James, my younger brother is Christopher. So we were all named after saints. I know Patrick, it comes from Patricius, the Latin root of Patricius, and it's also the patron saint of Ireland. Okay, I'm just brainstorming. Maybe this is something that I'm going to be able to write about. My middle name is Leong. Leong was always a source of embarrassment for me. I didn't understand the naming tradition of how I got this name from my dad. I did not also know that it was my grandmother's maiden name, and that's why it was put in there, which is very different from the way that Latinos and my mother would have named me with her maiden name, which gave her a lot of source of problems. It was a problem for her within her family because they thought she was leaving her culture, and so forth. And then my last name, Leong. It's an Asian name, but if you look at me, I don't really look that much Asian. I maybe look Pacific Islander, Filipino, people say, but Leong does not even identify my Latino heritage inside. So, maybe it doesn't fully identify who I am and my background and my cultures. This is something about my name. And, in my classes, that students who have taken my developmental classes, and we used to have them, my ESL classes, and even in my freshman comp class, we write a very long research paper about our name. And those students that are here that are in my class know that they're told at the beginning of the semester, we're going to have to write an 8 to 10 page paper on our names. What are we going to say? But I use it for a variety of purposes to teach different things. The reason I'm saying this is because a student went to an interview, and in the interview, their whole interview was basically about their name, who they are, how they identified, what they learned about themselves, and so on. And you can use this really as a way of telling about who you are. Your achievements. What have you achieved in your lifetime? And even though you may be able to list these someplace, these achievements could be very significant in the development of your character and in your growth. So you want to just list what you've achieved. For example, we had a student in the past who won the Concord City Council award for community service. We had another student win the Rotary Club award, and these are very significant awards that they can then talk about their service and their leadership through earning those awards. What do you want to accomplish? Okay, do you want to transfer? Do you want an AA? Do you want a BA? Do you want a master's degree? Do you want to move up to a PhD? What is your major? In what major, do you have that? Do you want to get it in? Why that major? What career is it going to lead you to? What do you want to do in that career? And in your bucket list, what else do you want to do in your life? What do you want to experience in this lifetime? I'm a tennis player, so I want to go to the Grand Slams. When I retire, I'm going on what I call my Grand Slam tour. I'm going to go to the Australian Open. I'm going to the French Open. I'm going to go to Wimbledon. And maybe I'll go to the US Open, even though as an American, I've been to the US Open several times, but that might be all part of my Grand Slam tour. That's a bucket list thing. Why do I want to do that? How do I have athletics define who I am and has led me to who I am today? And lastly, embarrassing moments, okay, or challenging moments. And students will always say, well, why do you want to know when we were embarrassed? Or why do you want to know why we were challenged? Do you want to know things that we failed at? And partially, yes. Students, if you think about it, we are at our best when we're comfortable. When you're embarrassed or you're facing a challenging moment, you're not comfortable. And we know that growth happens when you're uncomfortable and move yourself to a comfortable situation. There's your topic, students. That's what you write about. You talk about this moment where you were so embarrassed, but how did you get out of it? You had this very challenging experience. You were very, very uncomfortable. Growth happens when you learn how to make yourself comfortable again. So think about challenging moments or embarrassing moments that you had in your life, how you worked your way out of it to become more comfortable, because that's going to enable you to talk about growth, reflection, and how that embarrassing moment or how that challenging experience was significant to you. It is significance that gets to the critical thinking. What is significant about your name? What is significant about your achievements? What is significant about these accomplishments you want in life? What is significant about getting out of these embarrassing and challenging moments? And that's how you get to the critical thinking, because that's how people begin to learn about who you are. Okay, so this is again an activity that you're not going to be able to finish now. I wanted to introduce it to you to begin to give you a little start on what you might want to put in these boxes before you begin writing your essay. Again, think before you write. Go back to your timeline, fill it out a little bit more completely. Go back to these 4 squares, fill it out completely, because you are now identifying topics and significant events to write about that define who you are and convey the significance of them to the scholarship committee. So these 2 activities right here have already begun to get to what the characteristics of the essay are. Because when you're writing this essay, you may find through your brainstorming that you have some creativity or some rare talent. This is definitely true for the people who are going into the arts, the visual arts, the performing arts, the creative arts. Maybe you are an English major, but you have a knack for telling stories and you're going to be a short story writer. Okay. We had students that are artists, sculptors, that are photographers, and their essay centers around this creativity and this talent that they have. The essay also definitely needs to talk about intellectual curiosity. That's when we get at the what you want to accomplish, which your transfer institutions, if that's what you want, the degrees that you would like to earn, the major that you want to have, and also the career goals that you want. Those are those intellectual, your quest to have knowledge about particular subjects. You also then have on that 4 squares your achievements, or maybe even on the timeline, you've had achievements, exceptional recognition that have been significant, that you're not necessarily bragging about yourself, but you're talking more about what you learned about yourself, how you grew through achieving that and having that exceptional recognition. For a lot of us, ability to overcome hardships is a topic we also want to write about. You may have written on your timeline, maybe you immigrated over here at a certain time. Maybe you talked about overcoming language barriers. Maybe you have a disability, an emotional disability, or maybe you have a learning disability. How did you overcome that so you can continue to move forward? Through leadership and community service, and through your transcripts, we learn more about your initiative, your motivation, your leadership, your persistence. You didn't give up. You had all of these difficulties, or somebody put you down someplace, or a teacher was not encouraging for you and you just felt like giving up, but yet you continue to persist. We want to know about that stuff, so you can put that in the essay as well. Definitely service to others. That would be community service. I know that for me, myself, community service is very important to me. I do a lot of community service. I just like helping out other people. I feel very fortunate for the life that I've had and that I am living. So I would like to help other people out as well. And I know that this affects me immensely. I mean, with the Tyree Nichols, I couldn't even watch that. I just cried the whole time. It hurt so bad when he was yelling, "Mom, mom, mom." And it's those type of individuals that I like to help. I want to give service to others so they don't have to experience things like this. Maybe you have some sort of special spark, and you can write about that as well. And that'll come through in your timeline and in your 4 squares. These are topics that you can write about. You don't have to write about all of them. You could have different paragraphs that concentrate on these areas as well, or your entire essay can just focus on one of these areas. All right. And again, I'm just going to introduce this to you because I don't think we're going to actually have time to participate in it. I think if we had a little bit more time on the workshop that we could, brainstorm this a little bit more and workshop it. But, what is your story? Okay. And this is more kind of like a compare and contrast type of activity. And as we do whenever we brainstorm, we free write. That's one way of brainstorming. Some of us may have learned like the idea wheel as a way of brainstorming. Some of us may have learned about lists. You just learned about a timeline as a way of brainstorming. You just learned about 4 squares as brainstorming. But free writing is also another way of brainstorming. The only problem is that sometimes people don't stop to reflect upon what they're doing to shape it a little bit more, and they just continue writing. I would really have you just write for about 10 minutes or even 20 minutes, stop and then reflect upon what you're saying or what you wrote, so you can then focus the essay a little bit more on the activities and the experiences that lead to larger significance. And when you free write, remember the idea is that you just continuously write for the entire time without stopping. We're not concerned with grammar, with spelling, even sentence structure at this particular point. We just want to get the ideas out that we can begin to work with. Again, writing is a process. We think before we write. In order to know where you're going with that essay, you need to know where you've been. And brainstorming enables you to reflect upon that. So you can use this prompt. I used to be, fill it in, but now I'm, and fill it in. So maybe you changed majors. I used to be a psychology major, but now I'm an English major. So the first part that you write is, why were you going to be a psychology major? Why did you like that? And then all of a sudden you changed. And why did you change into that English major? And then what do you want to do with that English major? What degrees do you want to earn? And eventually, what career do you want? Here's another one with GPA. I used to have a 2.0 GPA, but now I'm a 4.0. That's wonderful. Why were you a 2.0 GPA? What was going on with you in your life? What was going on in your academics? And then where did the switch flip? Why all of a sudden are you now a 4.0 GPA? Well, I can tell you is that sometimes in education, we're fed things that we're not interested in, that we may have little care about. But now when you're in college, you can concentrate a little bit more, and you're finding that niche. You're building community, and you're finding a way to become more involved in your studies and in the classroom. It could be, and I know this is my situation as a Chinese Mexican American, in my English classes, and when I was in high school, we read no Chinese authors. I didn't even know any existed. I didn't know Lin Yi Tang wrote the first Chinese novel in 1929. Okay, I did not know that. It was never introduced to me at all. The same with Latino writers. And when I was in high school, we read the traditional literary canon, which was basically white men, and most of them had died. Okay, so it was really hard to connect to the curriculum. It was hard to write those essays about that stuff because you're just simply not interested in it. But you know what? Now we have learning communities. We have the Puente Project, which focuses on Latino authors, issues, and concerns. Now our Latino students who had those 1.0 GPAs, those 1.9 GPAs, and I'm not lying, we've had that, and they graduate with honors, and they're in graduate school, and they have PhDs now, and they've got internships, the Hispanic Caucus internship in Washington, D.C., or the UC-DC program, because they become more involved in their education. So you can write about things like this. I used to be unmotivated about school, but now I'm very motivated. Again, this enables you to look at how you used to be and how change and growth occurred, to reflect upon it, to talk about the significance of that change. And that's how you can begin to develop your essay. And as I said, unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all these activities in full length as I want to, but this is the kind of brainstorming activities and workshopping that we do when we're beginning to write. You'll notice so far in this presentation, we haven't even started to write yet, right? Or organize. We need to think about our purpose, how we're going to achieve that purpose, and what is the best way to do that. We need to plan before we actually write. So as we talked about the characteristics of the essays, of the essay, we talked about different approaches in brainstorming. As I just mentioned, talking about your story, how you used to be, but how you are now, to talk about the change, the growth, and that significance. Through the timeline and even through the four squares, you have identified different episodes in your life. And now in the essay, you want to begin to explain how these episodes have made you the right person for the committee to grant you a scholarship. Through the timeline, as I mentioned, you thought about how you would bring a friend who you haven't seen for a few years up to date in your life. Some of us may have just recently graduated from high school. Some of us have graduated a long time ago. How would you bring that person up to date on your life? And you're not going to tell them, when my students in my class, when we write that narrative descriptive essay and they want to, oh, I want to write about Christmas. Wonderful. I don't need 20 years of Christmases, right? I need that one significant Christmas about what you learned about yourself. This is exactly true with you bring a friend up to date. They don't need to know everything that happened in all the years that they haven't seen you. They need to know the highlights. They need to know the significance of those episodes. If you traveled, if you moved out of a country or moved from a different part of the US, you're going to go back and you're going to see somebody. What would you say to bring them up to speed? Those obviously are highlights that you want to talk about. In your essay, again, you might want to think about identifying your current goals and your aspirations. You brainstorm that on the four squares. All of this is going to help you to evaluate how you've grown in the last 5 years. And that's really what we want to see. If you have creativity, if you have a rare talent, if you have a special spark, what has inspired or fired your imagination? Maybe it was an internship that you did. Maybe it was a job that you participated in. Maybe it was somebody taking you someplace and all of a sudden you're like, that's what I want to do. You know what? Maybe I should major in this. And it all came because something inspired and fired that imagination. And even if you've gone in any type of exciting adventure, you can summarize those adventures to talk about how that led to some sort of growth or has led to some sort of value or some sort of direction that you want your life to take in. So these are all the characteristics of the essay. In the end, your essay really needs to show these three main areas. The one area is the development of the character. We need to know who you are, the aspects on a personal level. And we're not going to get that from the application. We're only going to get that from the essay. What are your passions? What makes you tick, right? What life skills have you mastered? And when we talked about embarrassing moments or challenging moments, how do you respond to adversities? Okay. And some of those life skills could also be academic or educational skills. For example, one skill that I seem to have mastered was note-taking and outlining. And what was significant about that is that my professor saw that and they said, oh, you should become a note taker. And I actually became a note taker for the athletic department at the four-year university because those athletes had to go into games all the time or matches whatever sport they were participating in. So I had to go into their classes and I had to take notes. And I mastered it. I learned a lot of stuff, some stuff I didn't care about, but I learned that they could depend on me, that I had developed a skill where I could help other people, where I can have service to other people while they're participating in another activity for the college or university, that I was still able to help them stay above in their classes. That's a development of my character, okay? It also helped me with my passion, with writing, of organizing stories and essays. We also need to definitely know your educational and your career goals, okay? Why do you want a degree? Why do you want an AA or an AS? If you want to transfer, why do you want a BA or a BS? What is that going to do for you in your life? But also, how is schooling and how is education going to help to facilitate that goal, that educational goal? With that intellectual curiosity that we talked about, what else is it that you want to learn more about? And by going through this whole educational process, how will it contribute to your lifetime goals, lifelong learning, career goals? These are the kind of things that are going to enable a committee member to say, oh, this is what they want to major in. And they're going to get there by doing this. And they're going to, once they get there, they're going to do this career. And in this career, they're going to do this. We need to know, we're not going to get that on any other part of the application, but in the essay. And lastly, remember, a scholarship is somebody is giving community service to you. They're giving service to the community by offering a scholarship to a student who's in need or who has a particular interest that they really want to help. So what is your sense of an individual's responsibility in our society? What have you done to make a contribution to the world? Because whatever that is, that begins to get at your ethics. It gets at your values. You know, what is your sense of responsibility to our community, our school, our college, to your family, to your local community that you live in, and in the larger run, in humanity? What is your role in helping us have a better world? So we don't have things like the Tyree Nichols situation that happened or the George Floyd that happened. We're hoping that it'll dissipate, even though there's been history of that going over and over, all the way back, we know, to Rodney King, to George Floyd, now to Tyree Nichols, okay? And I know what my sense is. You guys might not even know this, but I volunteer in San Quentin. I go and help rehabilitate those prisoners because I believe in second chances. I wouldn't be at the community colleges if I was not about second chances. The community college is all about second chances, right? You can come to a community college without a high school degree to have a second chance at an education. I always want to help people have a second chance. So I volunteer at San Quentin to help rehabilitate them so they can come back into our society and be better, productive members, and hopefully not repeat the offense that they did, and to also to help other people. Committee members need to know that kind of stuff. So these three areas are really going to help us know who you are and to be able to find a good match or find a good donor for you to help fund your education. So now that we've got to all that part, we actually want to get to the organization. You've thought about what you want to write about. You know what your purpose is. You thought about what you want to write about. And now you need to begin to organize the essay. So this essay is a very hard essay to write because in academic display writing, what you guys are doing right now in your classes is that you're learning how to write that essay by having an introduction with the thesis statement in it, and then body paragraphs with topic sentences and subtopics that develop them, and you have transitions within them. Then you have a conclusion to conclude everything up. This essay does not have a thesis statement, okay? It's more implied, and the implied is, this is who I am. So in the introduction, you want to, just like in a regular essay, you want to grab the reader's attention. You know, and this is the name part. Who are you? And this is how I began my essay. I'm a first-generation college student, okay? And now that I got their attention, they're like, well, tell me about being a first-generation college student. What was that like for you? How was it? So then I developed the rest of the paragraph in the introduction by introducing myself to the committee by providing basic background information about who I am. So my parents met working in the fields and strive for their children to have a better life than physical labor. Because my mom was a Latina and my grandfather was a labor contractor, so she was out there in the fields working as the oldest of there's 8 of them, 8 brothers and sisters, and there's only one boy and the rest are all girls. So as the oldest, she had to take on kind of that role. And even though she wasn't male, she still had to go out in the field, and she had to help them. And then my dad, an immigrant from China, the Chinese work well with the land. The Latinos are cheap farm labor. So, it seems kind of natural that they would meet working in the fields, because that's what they, were able to do in order to survive as immigrants. But as they worked in the fields, and they left and went into more of career, they ended up working in physical labor jobs. They ended up working in grocery stores. My mom was a cashier, standing on her feet all the time. My dad also standing on his feet as a meat cutter, and having to carry all those cows, half the side of beef, and cutting that all that up. And they didn't want their children to have that. They wanted us to work more with our brains. They wanted us to earn our money through our intellect. So see, I'm starting to develop who I am. I'm a first generation college student. My parents spent work in the fields and strive for their children to have a better life than physical labor. They wanted us to work with our mind, and I'm introducing who I am. And I'm in that introduction, I'm also able to talk about how important education is to me. So spend the first paragraph to introduce who you are. The second paragraph then can begin to talk about challenges or obstacles or any type of meaningful volunteer, leadership, internship, or work experience that you've had that, again, shows some sort of growth and shows some sort of significance in what you learn by participating in those internships, work experience, volunteer work, or in overcoming that challenge or that obstacle. So I'm hoping that you're seeing how these brainstorming activities are kind of helping to get us at what we need to write about in these essays. So you can share examples of obstacles you have overcome or a challenge that you're currently facing. What is it? Why is it difficult? What are you learning about it, about yourself? Where is it taking you? And when you talk about these, you want to provide specific information, examples. We call these details. For students in my class, they know them as RANs: reasons, examples, names, numbers, and specificity. And I know my students get crazy for me saying that over and over throughout the entire semester, but I'll say, I don't have any RANs. I can't see this. I'm not part of this. You need to make the reader part of your world. So I did a volunteer work at when I was getting my degree, because I knew I wanted to go into education. So I would put something like, in addition to being enrolled as a full-time student, I also volunteered 10 hours a month and have an internship with Sanger Unified School District, because I wanted to get more experience in teaching, what it was like teaching. And I also wanted to do it at different levels to see what level was best for me. So when the volunteer work that I did was with a junior high, and then I had an internship at the high school at the Sanger Unified School District. And as I talk about that, this is what I did. So what? That's what I did. What's meaningful? What did I learn about this experience? So now I will talk about how this experience affected or changed my life. We don't want to lead to sob stories, but we want to be honest. So I'll tell you what volunteering 10 hours a month at a junior high and having an internship at Sanger Unified School District did for me. It taught me that I don't want to teach at that level, that I can't, that's not my level, that I needed to have a higher degree to move on and teach at the college level. That's what I learned from that experience. And it changed my life into a different direction as far as degrees go and as far as what I wanted to emphasize. If you prefer, you can write about any volunteer, leadership, internship, or work experience that has been significant in your life. Because in the essay, what the committee looks for is that you have clearly described leadership either in the campus, in the community, or within your family. And that these leadership activities are explained within perhaps the last 2 years, relevancy we talked about. And lastly, that you have those details to support that subtopic. The subtopic is your internship, your volunteer, your obstacle, and your details then need to provide examples of the leadership and activities beyond the classroom and also ascertains the value of them in their development. Okay, that's what we're looking for in this essay. Paragraph 3 begins to talk about your career goals. You know, what is your career? What do you want to do? Well, I'm going to connect this to my internship at San Diego Unified when I learned that I don't want to just have a BA and a teaching credential. I want to have a master's degree and a PhD because I want to be a college English professor to teach literature from my cultures while empowering students from underrepresented groups. Because as I mentioned earlier, I had no clue who Maxine Hong Kingston was. I didn't know who Amy Tan was until I was in college and read that stuff. I didn't know anything about Rudolfo Anaya and Bless Me Ultima. I knew very little about Luis Valdez and his Zoot Suit plays. So I want to teach literature from my cultures and then empower students that come from underrepresented groups so we can connect a little bit more to the curriculum. So now you want to include detailed information about what you want to do. If you don't know, and it's very possible that we don't know what we want to do because we are vacillating between careers and also majors, that's okay. They're going to know that. But your job is to let them know which ones and the reasons why you're undecided. What do you like about each one? And why might you go into a particular area? Did you do any volunteer work or have any leadership activities, internship or work activities that help you discover your interests in this career? That could be a significant example. I know I had a student that wanted to be an accountant, and I said, oh, well, why do you want to be an accountant? And he talked about during the summer, how he went to his uncle's office, who was an accountant, and in this accounting firm, all the stuff that uncle did. Then uncle started giving him work to do, and he just loved. That is a significant work experience, or in his case, volunteer work that he did that helped him set his career goal. If you don't really know what your career goal is, you can go ahead and move on to your educational goals, but we need to know what your major and your goal is. There needs to be clear focus on those educational and career goals. And we also need to know if there's been anything that has enabled you to achieve this. Why this major? Why this career goal? And how will it be achieved? That's what the committee needs to know about. And definitely, you want to talk about your educational goals. What is it that you want to achieve in your education? Well, here's my example. I want to earn a bachelor's degree in English and then obtain a master's degree in English composition. Why? Because I did my homework. And I realized to teach at a community college or a CSU, you only need to have a master's degree. It's true you only need to have a master's degree to teach at the University of California, but since the University of California is more research-based institution, they like you really to have a PhD because it shows that you've done research. That's what a dissertation is, okay? When you're talking about your educational goals, don't forget to include detailed information about what you want to do and why you want to do it. You need to show us the path on how you're going to get there. This means that you should include schools you are considering or that you are transferring to in the future. Why those institutions? And once again, did you have any leadership experience, volunteer work, or work experience that help you discover this interest or this major? Or do you have any significant experiences that led you to doing that? And again, if you don't have those career goals down yet, a lot of students will combine the career and educational goals into one paragraph, but don't skip either one, because an essay that's going to score very low may mention a career or a goal, but the focus and the drive are not clear. There is like no clear description of the strengths or the need for the scholarship at all. So make sure that you tell us what that goal is and also what that what the career is and how you're going to navigate that. I just want to go back a little bit on that volunteer on paragraph 2. I forgot to mention that whatever volunteer work that you do, any service to the community, that you mention what it is, and again, how what you learn through it. If you're unable to contribute to the broader community because you have other important roles within your family household, like maybe you have to translate for your parents, maybe you have to go to the doctors, maybe you have to help out your siblings with their homework and go to school conferences, and that you have to mention the important role that you have in your household. Make sure that you discuss how the service has enabled you to grow and what your commitment is to our society as well. Okay, so I know I'm running out of time here and I didn't get to everything, definitely at all. Lastly, in your conclusion, you want to summarize the main points of your essay, just like a conclusion always does. You know, focus on your points, emphasizing one last major point. You know, you also want to talk about perhaps why you're the best candidate for this scholarship. Remind the committee why it is important for you to go to college and why it's important for you to earn your degree. Don't forget, as I said, a scholarship is a form of community service. So how are you going to give back to your community? And lastly, you want to explain why you need the money. How would this scholarship help you achieve those career and educational goals? Remember, even though that this is not a writing test, a strong essay has minimal issues with mechanics, and it shows the ability to structure sentences to advantage exhibiting a sophisticated command of sentence variety, and also displays a sophisticated education as well. That's the essay. I know it was quickly. Here are just some things that you want to avoid. And I know I only have 2 minutes here, but any information that is repeated or contained elsewhere in the application, you don't need to put that in the essay, okay? What happens, like with community service and leadership, there's lists that you have to put, and in the essay, people just put lists. No, you put the list in the list part, and then in the essay, you talk about why that work is significant, how you learn and how you grew. You also want to avoid an essay that complains about circumstances all the time. That's that poor me essay, okay? You don't want to, we want to know how resilient you are. And it's okay to write about obstacles that you face, but what is important to the committee is how you overcame that obstacles, not how terrible the obstacle was. You want to avoid an essay that discusses money or college ranking as motivation. We all know we're going to college to have a better lifestyle, perhaps that's going to give us money, and we all want to go to the best college as well. But you know, you really don't want to talk about all you want to do is attend the most prestigious college. You want to go to Ivy League. We know that we want to know your motivation for the love of learning, that lifetime learning that we talked about. So even though money or a school's ranking may be important to you, keep this information really out of your essay. Don't rely on an essay that has gimmicks. Instead, you want to have that substance. A gimmicky essay is one in which the reader tries to get the reader's attention through unconventional means. It usually doesn't work. This doesn't mean that your essay has to follow one set format or it can't be creative. What it means is that gimmicks can't replace substance. It can't replace the critical thinking. It can't replace a discussion of growth and the identity of who you are. Don't have claims in the essay that are not supported by the application, okay? And basically what this means that, you know, if you are going to say that you're going to talk about your extracurricular experiences, they should be backed up in the application. So if you claim that you have a lifelong ambition to help the environment, the committee would want to know the claims that are supported by examples of involvement in the environment-related hobbies, clubs, or even classes, okay? And as I mentioned, make sure you follow directions. You want to avoid essays that contain too many mechanical errors, cliches, or meaningless prose. We call that purple prose. It's just wordy. You just feel that you have to write something, so you're putting stuff in there that's really not about the significance, the growth, or the learning. And also, an essay that is too long or too short shows that you didn't follow directions. If it's too long, you may be disqualified because you went over the word count limit. If it's too short, that's usually a sign that something went wrong as well, okay? So you want to make sure that you stay within those 500 words. This is a hard essay to write because it's only 500 words. There's no thesis in it really, and you have to convey so much information about who you are and what you want to do and why you need a scholarship to help you out as well. Okay, in the end, no matter what you choose to write about, your essay for any scholarship committee needs to provide an answer to this question. What do we, the selection committee, know about you, the applicant, as an individual? Your values, your ethics, and your beliefs. How you've grown, what has been significant to you